Kurtis Pitts.
What was your dad's name?
My dad's name was Horace Pitts, Horace Alfonso Pitts.
When did you lose your dad?
So we lost our dad November 6th of 2014.
How would you describe your dad?
There's a few different ways I could describe my dad. My dad was very authoritative. His voice was like thunder when he talked and when he preached, and people knew him in that regard to be very authoritative, very directive. But my father was also a super duper funny guy. He was the type of guy you wanted to be around, big personality, never met a stranger, extreme extrovert, very fun guy. And so that mix of fun personality mixed with how authoritative he was, it made a very unique person, very unique.
What is your earliest memory?
So the earliest memory of me with my dad, I think this is probably like my earliest memory of my life. We were living on a street named Burgundy Street over near Clay Terrace in Washington, D.C. And we were driving up Burgundy Street. Burgundy Street had a hill, and my dad had a blue Oldsmobile with the split tail lights. And we were driving up the hill, and I want to say it was snowy outside or slippery or something like that, because I remember sitting up as kids do without their seatbelts on. And so as he accelerated and went up the hill, I remember falling back and hitting my head on the cushion seat. So that was the earliest memory I think of my life. And that memory was absolutely with my father.
So with that story, I'm pretty sure with other ones, do you have any funny stories about times you spent with dad?
I absolutely do. I have so many funny stories. So this one time, as I said, my father was a preacher, and oftentimes he was the assistant pastor at my uncle's church, so oftentimes my uncle would send him out to preach in his stead, or my dad would have his own preaching engagements. And so as a family, I'm one of 7 siblings, and so as a family, I grew up with 5 of my siblings. And so as a family, we were going to church this evening, and so me and my younger brother decided that it was a funny idea to shoot spitballs in my father's head while he was driving. And so my dad was trying to like swat. He thought it was a fly. So my mom's name is Diane. So he said, Diane, I think it's a fly in here. So he kept trying to swat. But me and Jeremiah kept spitting the spitballs. And when he found out that it was really me and not a fly, he wasn't too happy about that.
Since losing dad, how has your life been?
Since losing my father, it's kind of put a different perspective on life for me. Losing someone so close, it made death real to me. You hear about people dying all the time. You see people dying in movies or hear people dying in stories. You see people losing their lives on the news. But to have someone so close to you, someone in your immediate family, to die, to be snatched away from you forever, for real, for good, permanently, it helps you put a different perspective on life. That's when I knew that people can die. I was almost 30 years old, but being a younger man, but still a grown man, that's when I really knew that people really died. And so it kind of helps me to live a life now that I want to make every moment with my family as impactful as I can make it. I want to make an impact on people, what I do, what I say, what I play, the stories that I tell, the laughs that I make. I want those things to mean something because I can be here today and gone, not even tomorrow, but gone today, because that's the nature of the beast as far as death is concerned. People die every day out of nowhere. There's no warning. There's no notification that they get. It's a very real thing. And so death, losing my dad has really helped me to put a different perspective on death and life and how I live my life. Yeah. I believe grief looks different for everybody. I believe I've been able to grieve. First thing you said, gravesite. I have not been to the gravesite since my dad passed. I think when you see them put people in the ground, there are a couple of moments during the burial process and the funeral process that just make it more real. The closing of the casket and the dropping the casket in the ground, you almost kind of want to go back out there and say, hey, my family member's there. Like, you can't leave them there. So I've seen people do that. And so I didn't want to be that type of person. Not that it was right or wrong, but I just could never bring myself to going back to the gravesite. I don't know why. I don't have an answer for it. Maybe because it's difficult, or maybe because, I don't know. I wish I knew, you know. I know my dad knows I love him, but I would like to think that he doesn't feel like I love him because I haven't gone back, but I haven't gone back. And as far as the grief part, I believe I've been able to grieve. I may have some more grieving to do. One thing I've learned about grief is that grief is something that we're supposed to experience. Grief is not a place that we're supposed to live in. You know, we're not supposed to belong to grief. You know, grief is supposed to be something that we experience and we allow it to pass through our emotions, pass through our minds, pass through our spirits and our bodies, but not a place that we are supposed to live in, because grief will kill you. Even the Holy Spirit doesn't like to be grieved. The Bible says that we shouldn't grieve the Holy Spirit. And so grief is a very dangerous, they say high blood pressure is a silent killer. I will couple it with grief, because untreated grief and people who don't allow themselves to grieve properly, and that's a relative term, however is necessary for them, I think that puts them at a dangerous disadvantage.
How has the passing of your dad affected your life and affected your parenting?
My dad not being around, I feel like friends of mine who have their dads, I try to be happy for them still. You know, when I see people post their dads, especially like their dads that's older and stuff like that, I try to be happy for them. Comment, I almost try to intentionally comment, you know, to show support. I wish I had my dad to talk to and call about certain subjects, you know, buying a house, buying a car. What do I do if my wife and I argue and I'm right or I'm wrong and don't know how to reconcile? Just things that I would need as a man. I believe that it takes a man to raise a man. I believe it takes a woman to raise a woman. I do believe God will give grace to those who need to raise the opposite sex. But I do believe that having my father in my life would have played a very positive role in my life and helping me to be a better man. I believe I'm a good man. I like to think I'm a good man, but I believe I would be an even better man if my dad was around. Even for me to learn from the mistakes that he made and know to not make those mistakes, to hear how those mistakes have affected his life, to hear his counsel on why I shouldn't make those mistakes. I believe it would help me to be a better man.